Welcome back to the Back Pain Solutions podcast with me, Ben James, and as always, my co-host Jacob Steyn. Good afternoon, Jacob.
Good afternoon, Ben.
So today we're answering a bit of a listener question. So the question from the listener this week was, how important is hydration to my back health? Does it play a role? And could it be impacting back pain if someone is dehydrated? So we thought we would jump on, discuss this. No doubt there, as always, opportunities and requirements for a follow-up when it comes to water quality and other things. But we thought we'd start with a little bit of a discussion around hydration and how that may influence back pain or certainly influence back health. So Jacob, I don't know whether you've got any initial thoughts on this or questions in your mind. If it's something that you've ever been asked before or discussed with patients, or consider yourself really.
Um, I just have this immediate thought of when I would hydrate properly before training, you know, and that maybe already gives the answer to the question. But I know that if I hydrate properly before training, well before, that I just feel better training, whether it was a rugby training or an hour long sort of CrossFit strongman session in a gym. Um, Yeah, that's my only thought. So yeah, let's dive into it, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a relevant subject, and I think I would generally, I find myself, as you probably do yourself, discussing with different patients, and some are a little bit more open than others in terms of looking at their overall health and having these kind of discussions around nutrition and ancestral living and all these different things that I find myself discussing a lot with patients. How far removed we are from nature and what's natural to us, and sitting at desks 10, 12 hours a day is not a normal thing, and yet patients come in and you know that's the norm. I'm not a construction worker, I'm not. And I find myself having these discussions, and one thing that I'll often discuss with them is good hydration, just from an overall health point of view. But I would argue that I've never really kind of sat back and considered that specifically for back health and back hygiene, and yet in reality it would make a lot of sense to discuss that with patients from the point of view, certainly at the outset, of good hydration, because if we look at it fundamentally, the human body, and no doubt a lot of listeners have heard this before, just how much our bodies are made up of water, and up to 80%, is some of the stats that we are formed of water. And if we look at that individually, 90% water within the blood. All the cells within our body have water within them, and those cells are making up all of our tissues, whether that's the blood, whether it's muscular tissue or tendons, and certainly intervertebral discs, which are a big part of our back health, our back anatomy, and are often a source of complaint or a source of problems with respect to back health and back hygiene, and no doubt back pain. And if we look at some of the data specific to the disc, 66 to 86% water within the nucleus of a disc. So the nucleus, as we know, is that kind of central part of a disc that we know provides that kind of resistance to compressive load, and it's that small movement, 360 degrees to some extent at each level, that gives us the large movement overall. It's the resistance to compressive loads when we're running, when we're training, and so if we know that the nucleus particularly has a lot of fluid within it, then it kind of stands to reason that making sure that we're well hydrated overall on a daily basis would impact our disc health and other aspects of our health. Because again, I find myself discussing this a lot with patients that, you know, so many people in offices, or they're stressed or they're tired, chronically tired, and they're going through the day just, you know, surviving on coffee, which we know is a diuretic. It can lead to dehydration, and so people are probably chronically dehydrated. So if we imagine all of these people chronically dehydrated, particularly again back to, you know, the office worker, chronically dehydrated, sat in a chair all day, slouching through the desk or through the lower back at the desk, and putting that pressure through the discs, and those discs are therefore becoming dehydrated or less well hydrated as a result of general dehydration, then it stands to reason that this could be having an impact on people's back health, because we know as we age, the discs are gonna weaken. They are gonna dehydrate as we age. We're gonna lose that disc height, and so it would make sense for us to really give consideration and focus to some extent on good hydration, not just for our overall health, but specifically, you know, for our back health. So within the nucleus pulposus, there's this molecules called proteoglycans. They really draw in and attract fluid, and so by remaining well hydrated throughout the day and giving consideration for that, you know, with water, not coffee, tea, other kind of soft drinks, but, you know, getting good quality, good volumes of water would help with our overall health, and certainly specifically our disc health and our back health as a result. So my answer to that question, when I've you kind of sat back and had a little bit of a look at the research, but really just giving consideration for that fact about the makeup of the human body and the water content, absolutely is my message. It can be having an impact on your back health, and so it will definitely not do you any harm by remaining, you know, well hydrated. What I would say is that when we give consideration for hydration and and rehydrating and remaining well hydrated, we also know and we must consider that movement is important, because the back, the discs particularly, are quite unique. So the vascular supply is not great. So how is the fluid getting into to the disc? And so there is kind of this process of intradiscal fluid exchange, and so as we move, as we bend, fluid kind of is squeezed out, and then it's kind of drawn back in with movement, and then overnight, when we're not putting sustained pressure through the disc, then by process of diffusion, those discs can draw in fluid. So movement is also important to retain that kind of process of fluid exchange, and to make sure that those discs are drawing in fluid, rather than it just being a focus on, okay, you know, if I drink lots and stay well hydrated, then I don't need to worry so much about movement. As always, this is kind of part of a management plan and a consideration for good overall back health and back hygiene, but also, you know, increasingly as we kind of focus on the overall health optimization, not just specifically back health. But I would say absolutely, if you're listening and you're looking at optimizing your back health, or you're suffering from back pain, or you're on that kind of journey of recovery, then absolutely, you know, have a real think about how much water you are consuming on a daily basis. Are you taking in enough fluid, enough water? Is that something you've stopped to consider, particularly, like you say, Jacob, before we go training? If we've sat at a desk all day and we've maybe not well hydrated, and then we're going into the gym and we're training, you know, how well hydrated are those discs? Are we making ourselves more vulnerable to injury because of being in a dehydrated state? So I think it stands to reason that taking on board plenty of water throughout the day and remaining well hydrated absolutely makes sense when we look at the makeup of some of those structures and of of, of the human body as a whole. Now, I know we've discussed this together before. General hydration. We could go down a whole rabbit hole of tap water and the quality of water, and we know that there are a lot of microplastics in a lot of the tap water we drink now. So there's a lot of studies that are showing even microplastics in the testes of men as a result of poor quality water. So we've got to give a consideration from that at another time. Maybe I think being well hydrated with the tap water we have is better than being dehydrated. But I know, Jacob, you got some thoughts in terms of your own hydration and what you consume with respect to the water you drink on a daily basis. Some of the things that you're putting in there, and I think that'd be a relevant point just to mention, just to kind of open the minds of the listeners to kind of optimize that hydration, not just thinking about it as water in isolation.
Yeah, that's true, Ben. I drink daily a fair bit of water, and I have to say, because of what I put in there, it goes down much easier. That's what I tell patients as well. I make sure I put some magnesium, potassium, and sodium powder. Sodium is actually just salt, so I try to use a clean sea salt, or a Himalaya salt, a pure salt, with hopefully no toxic things in there, not polluted by any chance, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, then I add a squeeze of lemon juice, concentrated lemon juice, some fruit extract, a few drops of that, and some stevia drops.
Okay.
And then that combination of the citric acid with the fruit extract and a bit of a sweetener, together with these three minerals, uh, makes actually for a very nice drink. So it's a easily consumed drink. That's got a great taste, and then you've got that you've got the salt and the potassium and the magnesium in there. And so I have about 3 liters of this every day. And if I don't have it with me, very seldom I would forget my bottle, or I bring too little. Then I really, at some point, I really miss it.
That was going to be my question with respect to, is that a drink you drink first thing in the morning, or that's how you consume your water all day?
Yeah, I sometimes I'll just have a normal glass of water. I've got a water filter with activated charcoal um, sticks where the water then seeps through and pours out in a lower container, where I then get my drinking water from, we get all our drinking water from at home. So sometimes I'll have a glass of that, but otherwise it'll be that water that I'll be drinking the whole day, every day, whether training or not. Because, like you mentioned, Ben, I mean, we've got a physical job and you're moving, so we want to be hydrated. And years ago, when I made this change to switching to only this type of water, I definitely had less days where I felt like, oh, my body's taking real strain from having a physical job, making a long day. I have that a
Mm-hmm.
lot less because of other factors as well, but um, definitely partly because I'm hydrated properly.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. And any thoughts on some recommendations of what you use specifically with respect to potassium and magnesium? Do you have a powder at all that's a combination? Have you come across any brands
Yeah.
like that you found helpful in that regard?
Yes, I use potassium chloride powder from the brand Now, and
Okay.
I mean, it's so little. It's a very, I think it's a 16th of a teaspoon that you use, and then
Within like a 3 liter
that's per
volume of
liter.
water per liter.
Per liter, yeah. And then I use 2 teaspoons. Sorry, two, yeah, 2 teaspoons salt
per liter.
per liter. And sorry, 1 teaspoon of salt per liter. I've got one can of 2 liters, so I have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a can of. I've got a bottle of a liter and a bottle of 2 liters. So per liter, it's 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 teaspoon of magnesium, and 1/16 teaspoon of potassium powder.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a few drops of my lemon juice, fruit extract, and stevia.
Got it.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you have great brands with exactly the same mix of what I just mentioned. But it's very nice to just have a brand with powder. Everything's in there. You just take a scoop, you throw it in water. It's very quick and easy. It just price wise, it's
Yeah.
it's not cheap, and it's great if you can afford it. I can probably also afford it, but just because I have it every day, I just make my own, and it just goes such a long way with costing
Mm.
very little.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a factor we've got to consider. Like you say, you get a good good jar, if you like, of potassium chloride. That's going to last you months and months and
Yeah,
months. Versus buying these individual pack sachets, whatever brand it might be. And I've read a few out there, and I'm sure they're very good. I know there's one called LMNT from Rob Wolf,
yeah,
that is very good. But again, you're just having to pay that premium price. But hey, if you can, great. If not, then it can be made pretty simply. And I think just adding that electrolyte uh, kind of combination, if you like, to your water will definitely help with better hydration. But I think the starting point is just to reflect on how much water you're consuming at all at the moment, because we know not just again, not just back to back health, but concentration, this kind of foggy head, these kind of fatigue symptoms that a lot of people that are working in offices, busy, are reporting. A lot of that could be influenced by just really poor hydration. So really have a reflect and a consideration for how much water you're drinking, and start there. And once you can form better habits with respect to consuming water, and I know myself, having now bought a much bigger container for my water on a daily basis, I'm far better at consuming it than when I'm just relying on a glass alone, because you get busy, you drink that water, and before you know it, hours have gone by and you haven't refilled your glass. So I do think
yeah,
just making things easier for yourself is also you know a consideration, but really start consuming greater volumes of water, and you might find actually that you're going to the toilet more frequently initially, but actually you'll find that very quickly your body adapts, and you're not going to the toilet as frequently as you're consuming more water. But just do that, and then add in the electrolytes, yeah, in a week or two or whatever it might be. But we could all do with better hydration, and no doubt our backs could do with better hydration. Certainly our discs could do with better hydration, and you know perhaps we'll revisit this at another time with some specific research studies if we can find them. But it goes without saying that overall our health is going to improve, and we are going to feel the benefit of being better hydrated, and I'm sure our back health would too. And so if you're doing those post workouts, make sure you're well hydrated to help avoid injury. And if you're going through recovery from back pain, back injury, then clearly being better hydrated has to be a benefit as part of your recovery. So, Jacob, I don't know whether you've got anything else. It's a pretty straightforward episode in terms of the guidance here, but I think a really relevant question, and one that's really made me kind of stop and think. Actually, yeah, I should be recommending this on a regular basis, specific to back health, just because clearly it's got to be a benefit.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back with another episode next week. Bye for now.